to chat for the hearts that sustain us. Bringing the love where the waves crash and scatter. Words form a bond and they endlessly chain us. Kindness that matters. Voices arise and the flow never falter. Building a space where the ties last forever. Chat is the place where respect doesn't alter, holding us clever. Grateful are we for the sparks that ignite us. Chat lifts us up, every voice brings its power. Threads of goodwill through the storms that unite us. Hope we devour. Here in this space, every heart finds its meaning. Words weave a net where the world feels much kinder. Chat is the pulse, every moment redeeming, binding reminder. Grateful are we for the sparks that ignite us. Chat lifts us up, every voice brings its power. Threads of goodwill through the storms that unite us. Hope we devour. Quiet nights and the storms full of thunder, chat holds the light, every word a new tether. Strength in the love that connects us, no sunder, lifting together. Hats off to chat for the joy in your giving. Every kind soul brings a world that feels brighter. May these connections endure while we're living, bond growing tighter. Hats off to chat for the joy in your giving. Every kind soul brings a world that feels brighter. May these connections endure while we're living, bond growing tighter. To chat for the hearts that sustain us. Bringing the love where the waves crash and scatter. Words form a bond and they endlessly chain us. Kindness that matters. Voices arise and the flow never falter. Building a space where the ties last forever. Chat is the place where respect doesn't alter, holding us clever. Grateful are we for the sparks that ignite us. Chat lifts us up, every voice brings its power. Threads of goodwill through the storms that unite us.
Well, Isn't that funny? Hmm, that works. That seems to work. Oh my goodness, what is up with the camera angles around here? Hello, brain fog. Brian, it is good to see you. You win first in. And what a beautiful first in it is today. Cricket, it is so nice to have you here. Check out this one, Brian. What do you think? I love it. Scooter Mom! I'm so glad you're here. We never get to see you. Very nice to have you. Yeah, and you got to email me or you can email Cricket and you got to tell me which one it was cuz I won't remember, Brian. Isn't it cool? I really like it. I really like it. Yes, we have all missed Cricket. It is so nice to have him back. You know what, Brian? Let me shoot this off to you right now while I'm thinking about it. Hold on. Sorry for the yelling, Brian. There you go. Now it is sent, and I don't have to think about it. Hello, how are you? It is good to see you. What is new? I don't have much, guys. There is not much new. I my kids, my two younger kids decided that what they were going to give me, yes, it had the dog with the trophy. You are right, Brian. Tell me what date it was that you won it, and I can likely find it in my email. Thank you, Scooter Mom. I have this purple lipstick that I don't often wear, and I pulled it out today thinking that it might just be lovely. And I got this shirt last week or the week before. It reminds me of this wallpaper my mother had in our front hall growing up. It was this beautiful red oriental print wallpaper that was just in the hallway. The rooms coming off of it all had different colors, but it was quite lovely and it reminded me of that. So my children for Mother's Day decided that they were going to give me Top Chat is delving into Egyptology and fringe Islam, isn't it, Adam? A whole lot lately. Egyptosophy and fringe Islam. I mean, at least we admitted that we weren't Muslim. So, what my children decided was that they were going to give me for Mother's Day a fitness regime and my own two fitness coaches. So, they've boxed me into a pretty tight corner there. What am I going to do? Say no, children? I won't do your Mother's Day present? So yesterday was the first workout, and oh my goodness gracious, was I paying for it this morning. You can't even believe how much I was paying for it this morning. So we had planned to do some work around the house today, and I had to put that off. Hopefully, I will get it done tomorrow. We will see. I told them that if it impacts the rest of my life too much, we're gonna have to reassess. Sunni and Cher. Oh my goodness gracious, Adam. Scooter Mom, thing is, they were talking about all their fitness stuff. They were talking about all their fitness stuff, and I joked to them several weeks ago. I joked, well, why don't you make me a fitness regime? So I can't really complain when they come and make me a fitness regime. And to be fair, they didn't have me doing anything exceptionally hard. I did some push ups and some squats and some calf raises. But boy, did my body did not like it this morning. Some painkillers and some motion, and I'm feeling a little better. Um, we will see how it goes tomorrow. But at least I don't feel it. Luckily, the medication took effect and things were good. But let's just say it has been a slow day not doing what I had planned. What I had planned was to read this article. So instead, we are going to read it. We'll see how much we can get through. It's kind of interesting. It's about ensuring timeliness for collaborative work in the airline cockpit, which is, you know, it's a little dry. Um, it's a little dry, but we will see if we can get through it, y'all. The Franco regime where you work out with Franco. That is funny, Adam. The Franco regime. There you go. That makes perfect sense. So let's see about this paper, y'all. Here is the abstract. The title, let me give you the title first. The title is Action in Time, Ensuring Timeliness for Collaborative Work in the Airline Cockpit. And the paper is 2007. April 2007. So it's, 20 years old. This will be interesting to see because we have much more computing power now than we did 20 years ago. So the abstract reads, in the airline cockpit, it is critical to say and do things at the appropriate time and in the appropriate order. When a pilot is responsible for initiating a next action, but has not yet done so, the pilot not responsible can prompt or perform the action with talk that is prefaced with and. Rather than make conspicuous another's possible lapse, and prefaced talk presents the not yet initiated action as timely and merely occurring routinely next in sequence. And occurs in talk for monitoring another's conduct and for maintaining accountability in time. This article points to the value of seeing grammatical forms as consequential for just how work gets done in particular settings, and especially for identifying local means of creating order for agenda-based activities. The article analyzes transcriptions of pilots interacting in the cockpit on actual scheduled passenger flights and aviation. No, that's just the tags. Attention divided. Modding another live and the clown car just rolled up. Oh, Dawn, we will see you later, honey. Let us know how it goes. So, let's see how this goes. This article is concerned with a feature of language in interaction for collaborative work. When people work together, the appropriateness and competency of action for a task can be dependent on when it is done within a recognizably acceptable sequence of actions. Here, I explore a feature of talk for participants to create and organize their work actions in time. I examine the use of and as a turn preface in talk for ensuring timeliness of actions in a socio-technical setting where timing and ordering is critical, the airline cockpit. This article uses transcriptions of talk made from video recordings of airline pilots at work on actual scheduled flights. I share the concern of ethnomethodology and conversation analysis for studying naturally occurring interaction to uncover the language, practices, and processes of reasoning by which people accomplish social actions and produce the recognizable order of everyday life. More specifically, within that tradition, this study joins a growing body of research focusing on institutions and workplaces. Excuse me for one moment. You guys got all quiet all of a sudden. Any commentary on the paper yet? More specifically, within that tradition, this study joins a growing body of research focusing on institutions and workplaces. There are now many studies of professional client interaction, such as counseling or doctor-patient interaction, calls to emergency or help services, or legal or educational settings. This article joins a comparatively smaller but growing line of research in ethnomethodology and conversation analysis on professional interaction, especially in socio-technical work settings such as oceanographic research, a newsroom, architectural practice, surgical teams, control centers of various kinds, or the airline cockpit. Yes, Orion. Oh, good, Brian. A recurring point of interest in studies of interactions for collaborative work is how participants coordinate their contributions by monitoring each other's talk and visible non-talk activities and interpreting their potential significance for a jointly developed extended course of conduct. In various ways, participants monitor one another's actions for what they can reveal about the progress of the work. Another's action or inaction can be monitored for its possible implications for one's own possible action and for the direction work should take. Mutual monitoring is important for accomplishing work and for participants to hold each other accountable for their respective contributions. I will focus on the role of talk for monitoring and prompting the timing of actions for collaborative work as a relatively underexplored area within EM or ethnomethodological and CA or conversation analysis studies of work. While matters of temporality are significant, few studies actually focus on the impact of time for organizing interaction for collaboration. For example, Lynch and colleagues show how what to do next and when in the science laboratory is visible in scientists' arrangement of objects that are treated as mnemonics, as records of activities so far. Charles Goodwin analyzes how archaeologists classifying soil color at a field excavation orient to multiple orders of temporality simultaneously and use resources constructed in the past to build records that will form the basis for action in the future. Goodwin describes how a variety of different frameworks for the organization of time are implicated in even apparently simple actions, such as a single utterance, what he refers to as time in action. This article studies how actions for work are distributed in time. Participants create and coordinate their task-oriented actions, including talk or non-talk activity, to time and order them appropriately within a larger sequence of task-oriented actions for setting specific goals they are trying to accomplish and relative to immediate and evolving circumstances. My principal focus is action's timeliness, and it might be worded as the inverse of C. Goodwin's phrase, action in time. In the airline cockpit, it is critical to say and do things at the appropriate time and in the appropriate sequential order. Particular actions for flight tasks are mostly relevant and maybe even possible only when particular other actions have been completed. For pilots' work, there is an acceptable professional timeliness outlined for pilots in formal procedures, manuals, and training. Good. I will keep reading the paper then, brain fog. Also, it is considered good professional practice to perform some actions as they become possible, especially during the often busy approach stage of flight, partly because this can help to avoid the prospect of later having to rush actions. Here I develop a line of research examining what such timeliness and sequential ordering actually looks like in talk and how it is achieved, recognized, and made accountable in practice. In short, how do pilots establish, through processes of interaction, what next and when? My specific interest is in what happens at moments when this order and timeliness are understood as potentially vulnerable. My specific interest is in what happens at moments when this order and timeliness are understood as potentially vulnerable. When an action is seen as relevant and due now, but has not yet been initiated. How do pilots manage such moments and ensure an acceptable flow of talk for actions to perform tasks for their flights? This article uses naturally occurring data to consider moments when an action is treated as possibly overdue. It examines a feature of talk for maintaining accountability in the temporal organization of collaborative action. I consider and preface pre, I consider and prefacing in talk that is evidence of one pilot's monitoring and prompting another pilot's conduct. The talk presents an action as timely, as relevant, and due now, but not yet initiated by the pilot responsible for doing so. The and preface, the and prefaced talk is evidence of how pilots themselves treat an action as noticeably and accountably absent. Interaction and grammar and prefacing. This article adds to research on the linkages between grammar and interaction, where grammar is seen as not limited to the linguistic organization of words, but as part of a broader range of resources, organizations of practices, which underlie the organization of social life, and the way in which language figures in everyday interaction and cognition. Of particular relevance are several studies that explore the significance of various types of preface for the trajectory and interpretability of turns in naturally occurring talk, and how a feature of grammatical organization can be used by one participant to prompt further talk from another. For example, to expand a turn to talk. Most directly, the article furthers understanding of the meanings and functions of and. One example is the role of and for back connecting or skip connecting to display that a speaker's turn is not to be treated as cohering with an immediately preceding turn, but instead links back to the speaker's own earlier talk. In recent substantial review of studies of and, Turk notes that, apart from a few exceptions, previous research has examined sentence-level data removed from actual discourse contexts. Mandy, dear, how are you, sweetie? It is good to see you. One of these exceptions, Heritage and Sorjonen, is especially significant here because it concerns and in naturally occurring interaction during work. Heritage and Sorjonen have argued that and prefacing is a commonplace feature of interactions in institutional settings, where the parties are occupied with a restrictive set of tasks or address one another as incumbents of particular social roles. By prefacing their talk with and, participants can mark their talk as having a routine or agenda-based character and can establish and maintain an orientation to the course of action character of their talk across sequences. They considered and as a turn preface in nurses' talk to first-time mothers in informal medical encounters. They found that and prefacing is a feature of nurses' question design, allowing questions to be formed as a continuous or coherent group, where this coherence is not one of topic and is maintained across a series of adjacency pair sequences. And prefacing, therefore, allows nurses to achieve the maintenance of a larger activity. You like a yes and pilot? Yes and? Indeed. I have found elsewhere that and prefacing is indeed a feature of interaction in the airline cockpit and is a means for pilots to connect actions and maintain an ongoing sense of their conduct of their flight as a whole. One outcome of the importance of sequential order for pilots' work is that pilots' talk and conduct is mostly formally determined for them through standard operating procedures and is specified in manuals, checklists, and training as directed by government regulations, aircraft manufacturers' guidelines, and company policies. So most of what pilots do and how and when they do it is structured for them in advance as many discrete actions, for there are scripted wordings that the pilots are required to use. However, while pilots talk for work, Orion, there must be a squirrel, y'all. While pilots talk for work is subject to professional constraints, as they talk on real flights, pilots vary these scripted wordings in ways that situate them as part of the ongoing interaction. Orion, excuse me for a moment, y'all. Hi, puppy, puppy, puppy. Yeah, that's my puppy. You want to come see everybody? Mm? Come here. Yes, that's my boy. Sit. Good boy. Is it pretty? Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, come here. Come on. Oh, here we go. Say hi to the universe, Bubba. No, you don't need to lick my face. No, you can look at the camera. Yes, you can look at the camera. Orion is back to his original self indeed. He is doing very well. He is doing very well. Yeah. Are you a wiggly monster? Mhm. Yeah. Are you a wiggly monster? Yeah. Yeah. He is a wiggly monster. Okay. So you are done barking for the universe. You can get down, but you're going to have to stay here with me. Okay? There you go. There you go. Still staying right here with me. Okay, so that's pet number one. We'll see if we can get pet number two to show up. I've gotten so much smaller. He's looking big when you hold him. Wow, that's amazing, brain fog. I have shrunk quite a bit. Okay, so most of what pilots do and how and when they do it is structured for them and is structured for them in advance. Yeah, as many discrete actions for which there are scripted wordings that the pilots are required to use. You don't need that. Wiggly field. Yeah, I realized, I had the groomer out last week and she was just apoplectic because he was so wiggly for her. And she couldn't figure out how the groomer got him done last time because he was so wiggly this time. And I realized he was probably still on drugs when he got things done the last time. So he was probably, what I need to do is talk to the vet and get some sedatives for when I get him groomed. Just an antihistamine or something to calm him down. However, while pilots' talk for work is subject to professional constraints, as they talk on real flights, pilots vary these scripted wordings in ways that situate them as part of ongoing interactions. These in situ variations do specific interactional work as pilots meet in real time the contingencies of local circumstances. And prefacing is one such variation. It makes salient the sequentiality. I'm saying that he has a no drugs problem. I'm saying that he has a problem if I don't have drugs for him. It makes salient the sequentiality of talk for actions where the official wordings can leave this sequentiality implicit. Yeah, a drug problem. Remember the the guy coming in wondering if that I thought promoting smoking in dogs was appropriate? Wasn't he a peach? Yes, I'm promoting smoking in dogs. Promoting smoking for dogs. That one was a keeper. I think he needs to be on drugs at least when the groomer comes. He really didn't want to quiet down for her. She gave her He gave her fits. It makes salient the sequentiality of talk for actions where the official wordings can leave the sequentiality implicit. And prefacing prevents some new task as connected and relevantly next in a larger macro sequence of work. A very common occasion for a pilot to preface a turn with "and" is in talk that initiates a task. What was hilarious? What did I do? Scooter, Cricket, what did I do? Oh, now I get it. I'm catching up, y'all. 6 conversations at once. Scooter Mom, I had a picture of Orion. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. Promoting smoking in dogs. Yes, you are missing something. Let me see if I can find the picture. Here it is. Now let me look here. See if I can find this picture. Here it is. I had this picture of Orion. Scooter Mom. You see this picture of Orion? I had this picture of Orion and it's my thumbnail. Or I was just showing it. Maybe I was just showing it when this troll came in the chat. I think I was just showing it in the chat. And this troll showed up and complained if I thought it was appropriate that I was promoting smoking. Yeah. I was like, seriously? 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 I mean, promoting smoking in dogs? Yes, dog smoking pipes would be hilarious. This was when we asked Cricket for isn't it a great pic? We asked Cricket for a beatnik picture of Orion, and this is what we got back. Yeah, it's pretty fab. So that is the troll story. In this article, I show how pilots can take advantage of the value of "and" prefacing for making sequentiality salient to accomplish something critical for their work, ensuring timeliness of actions for tasks. I explore instances of "and" prefaced turns that stand out from others considered previously and that differ in 4 key aspects. Yeah, it's not a dachshund. Beatnik Orion is cool. We did play with our food. Nepa and dachshund. That is hilarious. Orion doing howl, exactly. Do you think it's appropriate to promote smoking? Okay, y'all. That differ in 4 key respects. First, the "and" Preface is a term that is not officially scripted. Second, the and preface is produced by the pilot who is not responsible for talk to initiate an action. Third, the and preface does not itself initiate an action, but is responded to with talk that does, with one exception. Fourth, the and preface signals that an action is not yet initiated when it might have been by now. The action is or soon could become overdue. When a pilot is responsible for initiating a next action but has not yet done so, the pilot not responsible can prompt or perform the action with talk that is prefaced with and. Instead of talk that makes conspicuous a possible lapse, and preface talk presents the not yet initiated action as timely and merely occurring routinely next in sequence. I will suggest that the and prefaced talk acts as a form of repair. Repair not of a trouble source in some prior or currently emerging talk, but of an action's timeliness in a developing larger sequence of actions that constitutes the pilot's conduct of the flight as a whole. Okay, now we're going to talk about collecting and transcribing the data. That troll would have had a field day with a baby pic I took that made one of my girls look like she was drunk on beer with an empty beer bottle nearby. Yes, I have one like that. I also have one of my toddler playing with what appears to be a grenade. It's a lovely photo. Okay, so collecting and transcribing this data. The transcriptions are of filmed recordings of naturally occurring interaction that were made for a larger project on interaction in the airline cockpit. Data for this article come from cockpit flights I made by arrangement with 2 Australian airlines to film pilots at work on actual scheduled passenger flights. I made 18 flights in total. 12 on the Fokker 50 aircraft, a 40 to 50 seat twin propeller regional airliner. These flights ranged in duration from 30 minutes to 2.5 hours, but most were between 1 and 1.5 hours. The other 6 flights were on Boeing 737 aircraft, a twin-engine jet airliner seating approximately 130 to 140 passengers. These flights lasted a little over an hour. On all flights, I sat in the cockpit observer training seat or jump seat, which is positioned in between and immediately behind the seats of the 2 pilots. I recorded entire flights from engine pre-starts to shutdown. Recordings captured the pilots' talk to each other, their talk to others outside the cockpit, for example, air traffic controllers and passengers, the many cockpit alert sounds and automated voice warnings, and external noises, for example, engines. I transcribed 12 flights in full, and the other 6 partially as required for a targeted analysis. The examples here are for various tasks and come from various flights and crews. Yes, brain fog. Andy kept his cool. Andy kept his cool over Macho Grande. No, I don't think I'll ever get over Macho Grande. Those ones run pretty deep. What's that from, Adam? The transcription notation used here is adapted and simplified from a system Originally developed by the conversation analyst Gail Jefferson. Recent variations can be found in 10 Have 99 or Jefferson 2004. The following transcription conventions are specific to the aviation data and should be noted. First, I use italics to represent talk outside the cockpit, typically talk over radio to or from air traffic controllers. Second, I identify pilots with the combinations of C for captain, FO for first officer, PF for pilot flying, and PNF for pilot not flying. These roles are explained below. Third, I use fictitious aircraft call signs and generic descriptors such as airline 1-2, destination airport, city and navigation point to conceal the identity of airlines, flights, and pilots. Data flight refers to the flight on which the recording was made. That's from airplane? Okay, Adam. It's most funny because we all know it's not true. Exactly, Scooter Mom. Exactly. My analysis, understanding the data. My analysis and claims about the data are informed by my knowledge of the commercial aviation industry and its practices, including crew training and operating procedures, terminology, radio protocol, aircraft types, cockpit instrumentation, and the functioning of aircraft systems, as well as issues of specific interest to the industry concerning safety and pilot performance. I read numerous general texts on aviation and commercial aviation, official accident reports, operations manuals for particular aircraft, and company training manuals. Airlines restrict access to some of their texts and materials, and so I am not able to quote from them directly. I read government and industry research reports on flight crew performance and scholarly research in human factors psychology, particularly aviation human factors. I studied commercially available information videos on various aircraft types, showing pilots at work during scheduled flights and in sessions in full mock-up cockpit simulators. I attended a conference on aviation psychology, and I met with air accident investigators, airline pilots, and human factors research psychologists working with military flight crews. As a consultant to investigators, I have transcribed and analyzed recorded voice data for air accidents. It is important to know a little bit about cockpit roles. On any flight, each pilot holds two formal roles. One is associated with professional career status as either a captain with senior ranking or first officer. The other role can vary from flight to flight and relates to control of the aircraft. On any flight, one pilot acts as pilot flying, PF, and the other acts as pilot not flying, PNF. The PF is in control of the aircraft and is responsible for the routine planning and decisions for the flight. The PNF assists the PF, e.g., is responsible for most talk over the radio. A first officer can act as the PF, but a captain always retains ultimate command and responsibility. I discuss other details of these roles as required when analyzing examples. This guy is a braggart? Little bit. The transcription segments are by nature technical and can sometimes be difficult to follow for those unfamiliar with aviation. I cannot explain every detail, so instead I prioritize explanation of what is necessary to highlight the significance of and prefacing for prompting action. For example, I will not discuss any overheard radio talk that the pilots treat as having no impact on their conduct of the flight. That is, it does not influence the talk or activity. I will not explain what is going on during periods of silence unless this relates to the action in focus. Actually, much of pilots' time is spent sitting still and silently looking forward to monitor instrument panels. Pilots routinely treat silences of many seconds or even many minutes as unremarkable. My interest is in how pilots ensure timeliness of actions by using and preface talk to bring an action to attention where that action is timely, due around now, but has not yet been initiated by the pilot responsible for doing so. A pilot presents the action as being relevant and appropriate now. The first 4 examples show how and prefaces a prompt for an action, and then 2 examples show other possibilities. I will limit my discussion to the placement role of and preferences, and so I will only make occasional comments on other details of pilots' turns. Elsewhere, I provide extensive analysis of whole transcription segments. The action that is initiated as timely might be a required call over the radio to an air traffic controller. The pilot typically responsible for most talk to air traffic controllers is the pilot not flying. If the pilot not flying has not yet made a particular call, the pilot flying can present the call as appropriately timed now by prompting this action. This first 2 examples show this occurring. I'm not going to be able to read you guys these transcriptions. So there's a whole segment of interaction between the captain, the pilot flying and the pilot not flying, and air traffic controllers. And then the pilot flying says, "And if you could let him know we're approaching." At which point the pilot not flying responds, "Airline 12 is approaching 7,000. Here, in this example, a flight is on descent and the segment begins as the first officer, pilot not flying, calls to announce that the flight will soon be 1,000 feet from the target altitude of 7,000 feet that they had set with the plane's automated systems. Later in the segment, the pilot flying and prefaces his prompt of the pilot not flying to inform the approach air traffic controller of the altitude progress. And if you could let him know we're approaching. The pilot not flying's call of 1,000 to altitude is acknowledged by the pilot flying, then half a second later, a buzzer sounds as they descend through this 1,000 foot to altitude mark. The buzzer is acknowledged by both pilots. Many seconds later, there is an overheard radio call, and then the pilot flying disengages the autopilot. Some 4.3 seconds after this, the pilot flying asks the pilot not flying to call and inform the controller of their altitude progress. And prefacing is when you're talking and you're expecting some behavior out of your conversational partner. Indigo, sweetie, how are you? And that is and prefacing. And now that Indigo's here, so they're saying and in order to remind somebody. They're saying and instead of saying, hey, didn't I tell you to do that thing 5 minutes ago? That's what they're saying and for. They're and would you please do this thing? Which is a callback to the thing that you should have done. In general, as pilots descend through a number of progressively lower altitudes assigned to them by air traffic controllers, when possible, they can prefer to make a continuous descent rather than leveling out at any particular altitude before later descending onto the next altitude. To achieve this continuous descent, they will often call the controller as they approach the current assigned altitude, hoping to receive permission to continue descending to a new altitude, or may even explicitly ask for a new altitude. Making this call is the responsibility of the pilot not flying, and it becomes a particularly relevant and timely action once it is clear that the flight is approaching a current assigned altitude. Here, the pilots have noted that they are approaching their assigned altitude, and the altitude progress was confirmed by an altitude alert buzzer. There are also alert lights. However, the pilot not flying has not yet made a call to the controller to seek a new altitude, and it is now over 20 seconds since the pilot's first exchange about the altitude. So there is a possibility that if this call is not made, it could become necessary for the pilots to level out. The pilot flying initiates the action by saying, and if you could let him know we're approaching. And the pilot not flying then makes the call. By and prefacing his talk, the pilot flying does not explicitly hold the pilot not flying to account for not yet making the call as a lapse, despite having the opportunity to do so, especially during the silences at lines 10 and 19. That is, the pilot flying does not say directly words that convey, you haven't done X. Instead, the and preface allows the pilot flying to present the call to the controller as just another routine next relevant action that you can do X now. The pilot flying presents calling the controller as a sequentially relevant action, given the pilot's now established shared understanding that they are approaching an assigned altitude. His talk can draw on their professional knowledge of the implications for their flight and their work together if they actually reach that altitude without first receiving a new one. And so now we've given another example. Just a second. So this is a lot of analyzing the data. And so I'm going to skip through this because well, let's read this explanation here a little bit. We're going to skip through the transcripts because it's a little confusing. But this last example also shows a prompt to a pilot not flying to make a radio call, only this time the call is to another aircraft, not an air traffic controller. The pilots had earlier become aware of another aircraft with the identifying call sign Bravo Yankee Golf reporting on the same radio frequency as them and therefore flying in the same controlled airspace. The data flight is on descent and will pass through the altitude at which Bravo Yankee Golf is flying. Therefore, the pilots must be certain of Bravo Yankee Golf's location and movements relative to their own flight, and they must communicate with BYG to ensure that the two aircraft remain separated from one another. You know, that they don't collide. Some minutes earlier, the pilots had discussed BYG's location, its directional heading, and its current position near a particular lake. As a consequence, the pilot not flying had told the pilot of BYG that his own aircraft would level out at 8,500 feet, a safe altitude, while he discussed with his fellow pilot to determine exactly where the two aircraft were. This is an entirely routine radio exchange according to the procedures that the pilots are required to follow. The segment here begins with the pilot flying deciding that because of the other aircraft's heading of 300 degrees and its distance from them, which the pilot not flying confers, they will not level out, but instead will continue their descent through BYG's altitude. The pilot not flying calls BYG with this information. Line 23 is the line of interest. As the segment continues, the pilot flying and the pilot not flying talk to reconfirm their understanding that BYG is flying at 7,500 feet and is distant from them. Then follow over 25 seconds without talk before the pilot not flying talks to air traffic control to announce a change in radio frequencies. In the meantime, their aircraft has descended through 7,500 feet. 2 seconds after the controller's reply to the pilot not flying, the pilot flying and prefaces a prompt to the pilot not flying to call BYG to say they have left BYG's altitude. And you can tell him that we've left 7.5 so he doesn't have to worry about it. Calling the other aircraft now is not an action the pilot not flying must do, but it is an action he could do, and it's good practice to do so. Recall that the pilot not flying had already told BYG that we'll keep on going down, and the pilots have acted accordingly and descended through the critical altitude. Nevertheless, calling BYG to say their own aircraft has actually left the critical altitude allows the pilots of both aircraft to be certain that the planes are no longer trafficked to each other. They need no longer consider each other's presence. Making such a call is a thorough approach to radio communication to ensure safe separation. It makes explicit that communication between the aircraft can be considered no longer relevant and is now closed. If the call is not quite a next relevant action, it is at least a timely next possible action, and it could well be considered a next preferable action. The pilot not flying is the pilot who would be responsible for making such a call, but he does not do so. It is possible for him, like the pilot flying, to monitor his own aircraft's descent, even during his call to the air traffic controller, or in the 2.2 seconds after the exchange. However, calling the controller places on the pilot not flying an extra demand, and that can divert his immediate attention from monitoring his aircraft's changing altitude and the significance of change for maintaining separation from aircraft BYG. He may not think to make the closing call to BYG. The pilot flying and prefaces his prompt to present the call to BYG as a timely action, as something that can appropriately be done now. So far, in the first three examples, the first officer is the pilot not flying, had not yet initiated an action, and the captain is the pilot flying, used and preference talk to present that action as noticeably absent and to prompt, "Cricket, good night, my dear. It was so nice to see you. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks for hanging out, even if it's a little long. Cricket leaving means we've hit First Minnesota goodbye, y'all. First Minnesota goodbye. I still can't believe y'all come and hang out and listen to me read these papers." Okay, let me skip over all this data because it's a lot of data to discussion. Skipping over to discussion. Repairing talk for an extended sequence of actions for tasks. It seems in the examples here that there is something being repaired. Though in conversation analysis terms, there is no trouble source turn, no actual problem of speaking or hearing or understanding an utterance. Nobody is producing or receiving problematic talk. There is a kind of trouble, only it concerns talk for acceptable and accountable progress within a setting specific, formally predetermined sequence of actions for tasks. The and prefaced talk is presented as signaling an action as now absent, signaling that one pilot is relevantly not talking. We know the talk is understood that way because the action is then initiated. The talk does not repair progress within or from a current sequence. For example, as the second turn of an adjacency pair, but rather signals progress to a professionally known and necessary next action that is due but not yet begun. The and preface talk repairs an action's timeliness. It would seem to be what Sachs described in an unpublished manuscript as forward-looking correction. However, what is corrected here is not the structure and meaning of an emerging turn or adjacency pair sequence, but the structure and meaning of an emerging turn, but the structure of an extended and jointly produced agenda-based sequence of actions. Here we have something like a repair of a sequence's proper development. Yeah, that sounds right. Dawn, you totally count. A repair of a sequence's proper development, exactly that. And a repair of a sequence's progressivity. But for a larger collaborative project of sequenced actions for task. An absent action is the obstacle to a sequentially implicated next action. We could liken the impact of talk here to repairs in group interaction at a music rehearsal. Keating found that in rehearsals, repair organization was part of a larger set of resources for negotiating decision-making and responsibility and for co-constructing group performance, and invites collaboration. In the airline cockpit, and prefacing occurs as pilots collaborate to ensure timely performance of flight actions for work. Examples 1 to 4 then could be instances of other initiated self-repair, and they are consistent with the argument of Shegloff et al. That techniques for other initiation are techniques for locating the trouble source, where here the trouble source is one of an action's timing. Here, the pilot not responsible for initiating an action, and so not responsible for the timing problem, says something, and subsequently the pilot actually responsible produces the talk that officially initiates the action. Example 5 is different and is like other initiated other repair. Here, the captain, not the pilot responsible for initiating the action, actually performs the activity required in the absence of talk from the first officer calling on him to do so. The captain pushes the button to select cruise power and then talks to announce that he has done so. In example 6, a pilot responsible for a possibly now due next action produces talk to say that the action is delayed. It is therefore most like self-initiated self-repair, where it is preempting another's possible interpretation of the action's timing as reparable. The action's possible soon, now absent status can instead be repaired in that its timing is accounted for. The action's absence can now be understood as not representing a lapse in the first officer's conduct, but as knowingly and competently delayed. Lip gloss time, y'all. How's everybody doing? What do you think so far, beyond Adam's maybe not inappropriate comment that the guy's a little full of himself? He did go on a little bit about me and I and. Any thoughts as we take a moment? Fluffy dreams of electric sheep. Yes, indeed. Let's find a gloss, y'all. Need some something on my lips. There we go. That's a little better. That is a little better. They were getting a little dry. Yeah, a little dry. Okay. Don't believe you understand about 1 1. He is talking a lot about, I mean, think about it. When you're doing something with somebody else in a sequence and there's an expected next step and they haven't done it, and you say, and hand me the blah de blah, right? So there is an expected next step that the pilot is expected to take and hasn't. Or whichever pilot, pilot not flying or pilot flying. If we interpret most examples as self-repairs of an action's actual timing, then the examples might be evidence that repair in the airline cockpit is consistent with the preference for self-repair found for mundane conversation. However, a difference from ordinary conversation is that here actually doing the repair by initiating a next action is tied to the pilot's professional responsibilities to act according to specific rules. That is, according to procedures spelled out in operations manuals, it is the first officer's formal duty to call an air traffic controller or to begin a checklist as either the pilot not flying or the pilot flying on the particular flight. And so a captain who instead does these actions would be doing something professionally accountable. That captain would be doing the first officer's job. In a sense, this does happen in example 5 when the captain does not wait for the required talk. The captain does not say something like, "And do you want cruise power?" to prompt talk from the first officer to formally initiate the action. We had earlier seen another captain say, "And the descent checks," which prompted the first officer to produce talk that formally initiated the pilot's joint conduct of the checklist. Yeah, go ahead, descent checks. Instead, in example 5, the captain just performs the action by pushing the button and then later talks to say he has done so. The captain's conduct is accepted by the first officer as unproblematic. Cruise power, thank you. Right, Scooter Mom? I didn't think there'd be so much to say about it either. Let's see, what do we got left? We may not finish this. Maybe we will. We will see. The examples here can therefore be valuable for indicating, let me make a note here. The examples here can therefore be valuable for indicating which flight actions are treated by pilots themselves interacting on actual flights as allowing for variation in the pilot's conduct relative to their formal responsibilities associated with individual roles like pilot flying and pilot not flying. Which actions are treated as acceptably other repaired and which as only other initiated. We saw that one captain, as a pilot not flying, pushes the cruise power button before being formally asked to. However, another captain, as a pilot not flying, does not say the first item of checklist before the first officer produces the talk formally to begin that checklist. We might see here a form of evidence for pilot's orientation to perform some actions for tasks like checklists, more strictly according to formal procedures and flight rules. In collaborative work, it is possible that repair of another's contribution could be heard as pointing out a lapse or omission. In the data here, that a pilot had failed to initiate an action that ought by now to have been initiated. In general, one way that someone's perceived lapse can be identified and brought into talk is explicitly to refer to it as a lapse, or refer directly to the absence of the action so far with talk like, you didn't do, or you forgot to do, or by now we should have done. Such talk could be heard as complaining and as a form of critique or negative observation. The talk can make the possible lapse itself a focus of attention and talk as a lapse, and can make salient an interpretation that the other who is individually responsible, that it is the other who is individually responsible. However, the examples here show that and preface talk does something different. It can bring a possibly lapsed action into the emerging trajectory of actions and have it initiated unproblematically. Does that make sense, you guys? It's easier to say, hey, you haven't, it's easier to say and than to say, hey, you haven't done this thing. The and preface talk presents the action as just something to do next, routinely and appropriately. Importantly, it can do this because it draws on a feature of talk that pilots use routinely and unremarkably to initiate and sequence actions for their work. In this way, the and preface can smooth the process of going on record as monitoring another's conduct and making salient another's possible lapse. It can mitigate the force of prompting the other to address the lapse. Indeed, the and preface can make the prompts bear hearable, as the and preference can make the prompts hearable as prompts rather than as instructions. The repair work is embedded within talk that makes salient the sequentiality of actions to maintain timely progression through the ordered tasks for the flight. In this way, and prefacing in pilot's talk has something in common with its occurrence in nurses' talk to new mothers. Heritage and Sorginen found that and prefacing allowed nurses to present troublesome matters as occurring within the routine course of questions. No matter what tone you use, your words would say, no matter what word, your tone would say it all. Exactly. To highlight these points, and by way of contrast, to show what can otherwise happen, I will briefly discuss an example in which talk for noticing an absent action is received problematically, and in which there is some evidence of acknowledging a lapse. The prompting talk is not and prefaced. Here, a captain as pilot not flying offers to initiate a new action. I'll just give you a call, whose timing is contingent upon knowing the flight's top of descent, the distance from the airport at which the flight will begin its descent for the landing. The first officer, as the pilot flying on this flight, is responsible for planning where this point will be and for briefing the captain as the pilot not flying about it. So the captain's offered new action is dependent for its timing on this briefing. The first officer hears the captain's offer and accepts it, yeah, sure, but does not begin the briefing. Evidence that the captain's offer was also a prompt for the briefing is that the captain then pursues it with, You have top of descent. The captain treats the briefing as timely now. The first officer replies with, okay, but still no briefing. Then, half a second later, the first officer does begin the briefing. Oh, top of descent is his turn is prefaced with oh, signaling that he has undergone a change of state, that he now understands the captain's talk to have been prompting him for action. Beyond this segments, the pilots discuss the descent point, and then the captain makes a radio call to broadcast to the controller and any surrounding air traffic their aircraft's position and movement in preparation for their descent. This is likely the call to which the captain referred previously, the action delayed by the first officer's absent briefing. Yes, Adam, that's what I'm getting. It's a social softener. It preserves collegial dignity. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So let's see what the conclusion has to say. We've got time. It's only 2.5 pages. Here we go. To collaborate for work, participants interact to create and coordinate their contributions, and they attend to one another's conduct, complete tasks and goals for the setting in ways that they themselves treat as acceptable. This article has addressed a relatively underexplored area for ethnomethodological and conversation analytic studies of the sequential organization and locally accomplished orderliness of collaborative work, how time organizes interaction or action in time. I used naturally occurring data, transcriptions from video recordings of airline pilots' interaction, blah, 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 blah. This article's findings can most directly inform research on socio-technical settings where work actions are strictly ordered and dependent upon specific timings. This investigation was undertaken within the commitment of studies in ethnomethodology and conversation analysis to explore and uncover the taken for granted situated production of orderliness in everyday life, and more specifically, order for doing work. Despite all the computer automation, the displays and dials and lights and buttons and switches, the airline cockpit is a site rich in language. Pilots' work together is dependent on spoken interaction. Much of pilots' time is spent monitoring instrument panels for evidence of aircraft performance, changing flight circumstances, and outcomes of their own actions. However, pilots also monitor one another's conduct for its contribution and acceptability for the job at hand. I considered evidence in talk for how pilots monitor actions timing and to orient to timing's importance and accountability. Actions for tasks in the airline cockpit are mostly performed in strict sequential order, where the appropriateness of some action is dependent on when it is done. And prefacing is part of talk for presenting and creating situated awareness of how work is progressing, of how actions are emerging in sequence and in time. Most specifically, the article has shown how time is situated and made relevant and intelligible in language and practices for accomplishing order for work. Urgency without demand. Yes, Adam. We saw here that and occurred as part of a locally produced there and then means for dealing with moments when orderliness for work was treated and acted upon as vulnerable. In this sense, the approach here is consistent with the major principle of method for ethnomethodological studies. As Rawls notes in his discussion of Garfinkel's foundational thinking and breaching experiments, the taken for granted orderliness of everyday life is often revealed by problems, those times when the participants fail to achieve orderliness. Yes, Adam. Finding how orderliness can be lost reveals the ways in which that world was made world in that first place. Finding how orderliness can be lost reveals the ways in which that world was a made world in the first place. I considered the place of and in turns at talk that are themselves evidence of pilots treating timeliness in order for their work as possibly vulnerable for loss, of treating an action as now due but still absent. As an analyst, I drew on my background knowledge of procedures of cockpit roles to know the sequence of actions for a flight, of what happens roughly when, but not to claim that an action was overdue. For that claim, I relied on evidence of what the pilot themselves did. Sachs asks, how do you go about talking about absences? Something is absent. Something didn't happen. That's a tremendously tricky problem about talking about things that haven't happened. What we can perhaps do is see whether there are some methodical ways that persons arrive at such noticings. There are some occasions under which absences are noticed. If we can characterize the bases for them, we can come up with a usable notion of absence. And such a notion could perhaps be generalized beyond the specific occasion that was happened to construct it in relation to. A bridge over troubled communication. There you go, Adam. I've gone a little way towards responding to this tricky problem for one setting. The examples showed moments when a pilot not responsible for talking to initiate an action spoke out of turn and used unofficial, unscripted, and prefaced talk to present an action as timely but noticeably absent. Making absence salient was a means for ensuring actions acceptable performance in time. The findings are generally consistent with Turk's conclusion that speakers use "and" to bridge gaps and restore coherence when there are discontinuities of some sort in interaction. Let me try that again. The findings are generally consistent with Turk's conclusion that speakers use "and" to bridge gaps and restore coherence when there are discontinuities of some sort in interactions. Here, "and" was a resource for dealing with the threat of discontinuity for actions timing and the acceptable progress of work. This article points to the value of seeing features of grammar as consequential for just how work gets done in particular settings, and especially for organizing work in time. Examining links between grammar and sequential structure in interaction can help identify local means of creating and maintaining order for agenda-based activities. In this way, we further what Durante refers to as an interest in capturing the elusive connection between larger institutional structures and processes and the textual details of everyday encounters. What we captured here was evidence of airline pilots' orientation to the importance of timeliness and strict sequential order for performing flight actions. I presented evidence in talk for how monitoring and prompting another's conduct was accomplished as a relevant social action for doing collaborative work. I suggested that an "and" preface mitigated such talk and allowed it to be received unproblematically by not making conspicuous another pilot's potential lapse, but instead presenting an absent action as just something appropriate to do next. An "and" preface can do this because pilots commonly "and" preface officially scripted talk for timely initiation of actions. This article supports the view of Shegloff et al. That matters of great moment are missed if grammar's order is explored as entirely contained within a single self-enclosed organization. Grammar's integrity and efficacy are bound up with its place in larger schemes of organization of human conduct and with social interaction in particular. Getting timing right is always a matter of great moment for flying airliners, and it is something to which "and" can contribute. Second Minnesota goodbye. Gone. Almost on to third Minnesota goodbye, y'all. But that is the end of that article. The sand is your land. The sand is your end. That's good, Papa Cat. So I have to write a summary of that article. And then in class on Tuesday, we will have a group project to present that article to the other half of the class. We'll have, like, I don't know, 45 minutes to come up with the presentation and slides, and 10 minutes to do the presentation. That will be the exercise for Tuesday. Thank you, Scooter Mom. That is what my project is tomorrow, is to write a summary for that article. A short summary, less than 250 words. I hate writing summaries. It is not my favorite thing. But then I generally dislike writing. This class. Only 2 weeks, you guys. Only 2 weeks. I can do this. I can do this. It's only 2 weeks. No, this is actual classwork. Did you think it was a random article, brain fog? No, this is actual classwork. Summary. Say it quick, say it nice. Yep. I mean, I've got to summarize all this stuff. It takes an ethnomethodological and conversation analysis approach to analyze transcriptions of flight data that were taken in this manner, in this way, of this many planes, of this many flights, of this type, of this time. I'll get it done. Not easily, but I will get it done. Absolutely, you guys totally help because now I have read it. And that is the most important thing, that I be able to read it, get it done, digest it a bit. Um, that's what that's what it's all about. Absolutely. So, how are you feeling, brain fog? Are you calmed down? What's everybody got on tap for the week? I I had lunch with a friend last week and they are doing well. It was good to see them. They've got a get together that they've invited me to next Saturday. Last night, hubby came home from his errands. Right, Adam? The papers are the papers are really difficult. And they do, I mean, they take interesting information and make it incomprehensible. Really incomprehensible. 2 weeks, you guys. 2.5. 2.5 weeks. I have been thinking about what I want to do for graduation for myself. I think I've talked about this. Considering jewelry, considering a trip. I like the experiential angle. Any any suggestions I am open to. It's not the papers that kill me, Adam, it's the writing summaries. Oh my goodness. We have had to write 1 or 2 summaries a week for the last 8 weeks. They tire me out. Oh, good. You got through it perfectly? You have a scooter report tomorrow, then a Zoom meeting tomorrow night to go over speaking notes in a presentation to Health Canada. Oh my goodness, Scooter Mom, tell me about the presentation. Please tell me about the presentation because I know there is so much anti-vaping that is going on. I'm curious. I'm curious about your presentation. That's impressive that you're going to do a presentation like that. What's your what's the summary? What's the summary of your presentation? I'm really curious about it. Everybody is so anti-vaping, but I mean, I think disposable vapes are probably a terrible thing. But I think vaping in general is better than smoking. So, on the other hand, before vaping came along, I wasn't smoking. So, we're senior vapors trying to get them to see that their actions are only punishing us rather than protecting youth. Good for you, Scooter Mom. Good for you. There are more better ways to protect youth. than the laws they're currently enacting. There's an excise tax that doubles your price. Oh my goodness, Scooter Mom. A sin tax. They're doing a sin tax. I have a problem with sin taxes. Do not fund your stuff on the fact that I am indulging. That is inappropriate. Banning flavors has increased the youth smoking rates. Really? Really? That's impressive statistics. I wonder what those statistics look like in the US. Although we've got bigger fish to fry right now than vaping laws. Much bigger fish to fry than vaping laws. I have not tracked and increased the underground markets. Well, of course they've increased the underground markets. I mean, syntax against syntax. There you go, Adam. Syntax against syntax, indeed. Very annoying. Very annoying. Don't fund your XYZ on the back of something that you think is bad. You started smoking at 10, so vaping is healthier than putting cigarette smoke in our lungs. Absolutely. It is a much better delivery method than putting cigarette smoke. And it also doesn't destroy your house. It doesn't destroy interiors. It's harm reduction, y'all. Harm reduction. Harm reduction. Always harm reduction. We need to look at things from a harm reduction perspective, not as a eliminate perspective, because whenever you try to eliminate something, you just drive it underground, which is what Scooter Mom is finding. Stop profiting off your efforts to improve your health. Oh, Scooter Mom, I hope you tape it. I want to see it. I'm so proud of you. Is it going to be any place that we can watch? I want to cheer you on. That's really important work. Started smoking when I was 12. You stopped at age 52 for good. Oh my goodness gracious. That is a long time of smoking. And vaping makes it work, huh, Scooter Mom? Okay, do that. I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Have we had a third minute stop for good around 40? I have always smoked. I've picked up cigarettes here and there, but I've never been a dedicated smoker because hubby didn't ever like it. So it was just easier not to smoke. And I've always been one who could pick cigarettes up and put them down. Pick them up and put them down. They've never been an issue for me to put things down. But the vaping feeds my oral fixation better than bubble gum, better than smoking, better than a lot of other options. It's probably also part of the reason that I've lost weight. Adam, you crack me up. Never fails. I started doing quantum mechanics at 49 and stopped at 13. Hilarious. Hilarious. So I've got a week of work. I'm going to go see Lilo and Stitch on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to that. I don't know what's going on Friday. Got classes this week. Oh, I would love that, Scooter Mom. I would love you to see your speech. I'm so impressed. There were always curtains of cigs at home. Wow, brain fog. Yeah, my dad died of lung cancer. He quit smoking in his 20s. He was never a big smoker. He quit smoking in his 20s and died of lung cancer in his late 60s. Was one of the most Oh, you're getting a new bed? What kind of bed did you get, Indigo? That's so exciting. That's really exciting. I saw that pardon me, that you're looking to go shopping for furniture, and I really wish that I was closer. I would totally enjoy helping you do that. One of the my favorite things to do is thrift shop for furniture. Yeah, Scooter Mom, send Brain Fog one too. Or if you don't have her email address, I will forward it along. Shoot. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Oh, there it is. It's a Serta mattress with an adjustable base and cooling foam. Oh, Indigo, you will love it. I see it, Scooter Mom. It hath arrived. It hath arrived. Thank you for sending it. I am so impressed. You're going to have to let us know how you're received. I would love to read it out loud. Okay, that's great. I will read it out loud, y'all. Good afternoon. My name is Scooter Mom, and I am 62 years young. I stopped smoking 9 years ago with vaping. First, did you know that nicotine is naturally present in several vegetables? It's not a chemical, unlike all the ingredients aside from tobacco in cigarettes. The tar and other additives in cigarettes are what makes them so unhealthy to smoke. Plus, let's face it, burning them to inhale them does absolutely no good. Did you know that nicotine is being used to help with chronic illnesses like Parkinson's, ADHD, and Crohn's? As a chronic pain patient myself, this is one reason why I continue to vape. Nicotine does not cause cancer. Now we all know that, let's move on to my opinions of some of the regulations placed on vaping. It has been clear to many of us, the Canadian public, for many years that the old ways of smoking cessation don't always work. Speaking for myself, if you to try to tell me there are only certain ways I'm permitted to stop smoking, I'll do it another way just to give you the one finger salute. I know I'm not alone in that. Putting small vape shops out of business, the excise tax, more on that in a moment, and social scapegoating just builds up anger and resentment. I'm an adult. Give me credit for knowing myself better than you do. For instance, I know that I'm allergic to adhesives, so patches caused me nothing but aggravation and itching, which made me want to smoke. I know that I have gum disease, probably in part from smoking, so I know that the gums and lozenges hurt. I know that hypnosis didn't work for me, but I had a nice nap. I know that counseling also didn't work for me, but appreciated the effort. I know vaping worked for me, continues to work for me, and it tastes way better than any of the approved ways to quit. A flavor ban might sound like a good idea, but are you aware that since Nova Scotia brought in a flavor ban 2 years ago, they have become the province with the highest youth smoker rate? Quebec has developed a thriving underground market since it enacted a flavor ban. So that worked out well, didn't it? For the tobacco companies, that is. Vaping is not smoking, so let's stop treating it like smoking. There is no secondhand smoke from a vape. Stop making me go to the smoking area to use my vape. Stop taxing me like I still smoke. It's more expensive for me to vape than it was for me to smoke. I've been considering the black market because the excise tax has my every purchase becoming more than double by the time I check it out. That is absolutely ridiculous. My lungs are much better now than they were when I was smoking, but your government is punishing me for choosing a healthier way to stay smoke free. Make that make sense. Oh, and by the way, youth are always going to try things that we tell them are off limits. It's a rite of passage to challenge authorities. So stop telling us the excise taxes are to prevent youths from vaping, because you're just hurting the rest of us and cashing in on our efforts to improve our health. Thank you for the time, and I look forward to being able to work with you to find better ways to help everyone become and stay smoke free. Excellent, Scooter Mom. Excellent. Where's your refreshing drink? Which refreshing drink? No Face? It will definitely be better than an old futon on the floor, Indigo. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness gracious, Indigo. I am so glad that you're getting it done. You're welcome, Scooter Mom. Not a problem. Name change on the fly. Name change on the fly. Not a problem at all. It was awesome. It was a great speech. You only have 3 minutes. I think it's good. I think it's good. You did great. It must feel great having the show done and having the speech done all ahead of time. I'm so proud of you, Scooter Mom. You guys, I can't believe we're not getting a third Minnesota goodbye tonight. The award is perfectly adorable. I'm going to have to show it off and put it up on my screen. Look at this cutie pie. I have to show it to you guys. It's just so utterly adorable. So utterly adorable. Doesn't it feel that way, Scooter Mom? I know how you are. You keep going, what, I can't possibly. Oh, what colors are your new rug, Indigo? What kind of rug did you get? That's exciting. That's exciting. So here is the third Minnesota Goodbye Award because I just have to show it off. Somebody'll get it. Look at that. Yeah, you must be super excited, Indigo. That is really, really exciting. No third Minnesota goodbye today, y'all. That's a pity. It's a cutie patootie, ain't it? Maybe we'll share it for next time. Indigo, I want to hear about the colors in your rug. Isn't it fun? Yeah, I loved it too. Cricket does the most fun stuff. Although I get no end of grief from my children for engaging in this AI nonsense. The younger two are not happy about it. Thank goodness it's not chocolate. Yeah. Yeah, Carrie Ann. There you go, Papa Cat. That's pretty funny. Carrie Ann. Indeed. Okay, you guys, I gotta go find some dinner. It is late here. Thank you all for helping me do my homework. It is so much nicer with y'all here. And I will catch you all on Wednesday. Until then, be well, take care of yourselves, and, go get in some good trouble. Bye bye.